What's up, everybody? Welcome to my YouTube channel. So today I want to talk a little bit about Sales 101 and an important topic that's not talked about in a lot of sales instructional videos, and that's called leading questions. So what is a leading question? A leading question is a question that is asked that prompts the answer that the person that does the asking wants in the first place. So if you look back, there was a congressional inquiry to the big tech companies, Facebook, Google, all that. One of the congressperson people said, sir, we had a person here that said that you stole their data and they were a small business. And they turned around and said, why do you steal data from people? That is a textbook example of a leading question. Why? Because it's basically what the congressperson was trying to do was get the Google executive to incriminate themselves instead that they steal data. It's also a trap in that that person has to be very careful with how they answer the question, because if they answer that question any way or shape and form in the affirmative, they basically incriminated themselves. And in all fairness, the person that made the accusation about stealing data, it was never determined whether or not that person was under oath. So even in a court of law, that's not even admissible. So that's an extreme example. Let's look at another one. If you ever watch Boiler Room, 1990s movie about basically lots of stock scams in the 90s. So you had these boiler room call centers, very aggressive people doing drugs, so on and so forth, calling up and saying things like, if you're drowning and I throw you a life jacket, would you grab it? Yes, good. Pick up 200 shares. I won't let you down. That's a real aggressive, that's a real leading question, and that is a sign that someone's trying to rip you off. Very aggressive. Now, when we come to sales and real estate investings, a lot of time, I think a leading question is, if I pay cash and close on Friday, what's the least you'll take? It's very aggressive. It is somewhat of a leading question. It can be used, but I don't use that question in particular. One, because there are a lot of virtual assistants that are using it. Two, because on even simple places like Facebook Marketplace and apps like OfferUp and Let Go, where you buy and sell used items, people are using that. If I pay cash, what's the least you'll take? Every time I list an item for sale, I just trade things, and, TVs and stuff that I don't want anymore. Someone will always ask me that. But the interesting thing is the people who do the asking almost never follow up with an offer. So with that experience and with the experience of VAs, usually the people that are using these questions don't have any money. That's why I don't use it, because the competitors that are using it generally don't have any money. It's an overuse of tactics, and in my opinion, an overuse of tactics is designed to compensate for an inferior product. Does that mean all leading questions are bad? Well, not necessarily, because if another example of a leading question can be if you're scheduling a walkthrough with a prospect and it becomes, can we meet next week or this weekend or whatever? Can we meet next week? Sure. What time's good for you? I don't know, any time. All right. Generally, you're going to want to kind of give them less options because you want to nail down a time. So if you say, okay, is Tuesday at 1 good for you, or would be Thursday at 9 a.m. be better? That's generally a leading question. I first came across that technique in Tom Hopkins' sales books, and he talked about an alternate advance. I think what he did was he took the leading question and just put his own spin on it. But in real estate with appointment setting, it is very relevant. Now, the difference between that question and the life jacket question is if the person has already agreed that they want you to walk through their house. That's the real key there. And what a lot of people do, for example, I was looking at buying some new cars, and I call up the dealership and I asked the sales rep about, what's the difference between hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and regenerative hybrids, because I generally didn't know. He told me he didn't know, and then he said, but we have a great product, Toyota's the best. When do you want to come in? Do you want to come in Saturday at 3 or Friday at 4 p.m.? That's a leading question, because I did not say that I wanted to come by the dealership. I didn't tell him I wanted to look at a car. I wanted information. Now, the interesting thing is when he asked me that, I thought to myself, well, gee, I know what he did. But I said, well, I could just make the appointment. If I want to go look at a car, I can. If not, I just won't go. And that's what I did. So I said, sure, Saturday at whatever it was, 3 p.m., and I didn't show up. So when you start to overuse those leading questions, you will have generally a lower conversion rate and a high no-show rate. And I think that's one of the problems, because there are a lot of salespeople and mainly sales managers that are exerting tremendous amounts of pressure on their salespeople to sell more, sell more, sell more. And they're sort of inculcating and hammering this idea into their salespeople that if you're not using these leading questions, you're doing something wrong. I've worked for a lot of sales managers. A lot of them are managers because they're not smart enough to do anything else. Some of them are hard workers. They're very productive members of society. I'm not saying it's bad, but you can pick up a lot of bad habits from the wrong type of sales managers. So when should you use leading questions? Like the example I just gave you with the appointment setting. If the person is looking for a cash offer, they've talked to you, they confirm that it would be fine for you to go by, look at the house, look at the repairs that are needed, then you can use the leading question as to Tuesday or Thursday like I just described. Now, when I use them, I do use them in negotiations. I use them very strategically. And the main point that I want to make in this video is that I will use a leading question if it has a very specific purpose with a specific outcome in mind and the prospect has already been qualified by budget authority need timing, so that I'm not wasting my time, I'm not wasting the prospect's time. So, for example, if I determine that one of my prospects wants to do business with a local business like me and not a big iBuyer or a hedge fund, that's something good. If in the discovery process they say, because I'm going to ask them how they heard about me, why they went to the website, was there anything on the website that stood out to me, and they'll say a lot of things like, you look like a local guy that's trustworthy, and I'm not so sure about the big hedge funds. That does hit my sales avatar, that does hit my ideal customer profile. Look at my other videos on ideal customer profile. Then I will say something to the effect of, when we're negotiating, well, you mentioned earlier that you wanted to do business with a local person like me. Now, I don't compete with the big hedge funds on price, but you said that you wanted someone local, trustworthy, didn't you? That's an example of a leading question, but I'm reaffirming what the prospect has already told me earlier in the discovery process. So I'm using it as a tool to align my value proposition with their needs. And I'm not using it as a tool to beat them down or get over on them, and that is very important. So if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the description. Like this video, subscribe to the channel. There's going to be a lot more content coming your way. Hope to see you soon. Get out there and make some offers on some properties.